Because you know, and I know, Nico, without good health, man, everything else, it just doesn't matter as much. And I think this is what drove me in my 20s. And it's what's driven me every year since. This idea that, I could have all the money in the world and I don't. I can, whatever, right? I mean, all these things, you can list all of these things, these material possessions. You described your grandmother. Her life really, it came back to what was in a box. We all know what this feels like. My mom passed in early January as well at 93. And I remembered all the things that she loved about her life, and of course, as the years went on, those things began to fade and they changed and they became, in some respects, like this one TV show that she would want to watch. And it became so important for her to record that show. But none of it mattered in the last moments of her life, in the last weeks and months of her life when she was suffering, terribly.
Let me invite you to sit back, drop your jaw, tongue, and shoulders, take a deep breath, and if you wish, close your eyes for a moment and feel the beat within. In a few seconds, you just jumped from head to heart and felt the beat within, opening up to receive even more value and fulfillment out of your business and life. And today's episode. I'm your host, Nico van der Venne, confidant to successful CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs striving to achieve everlasting fulfillment. Welcome to the Everlasting Podcast with our next guest, Al Lehman. The introduction of Al is pretty unique in all the introductions that I've done, because Al is currently 64, and since his mid-20s, Al wanted to live disease, doctor, and drug-free to give himself the best chance to die a healthy and a ripe old age of around 120. Now, that's a target to reach. He's also called the Age Optimizer, and Al coaches aging and aspiring adults to take back control of their health so they can live stronger in their second half. Motivational speaker and author of Age Well and Feel Great. Welcome to the show, Al. How are you today?
Nico, I'm doing great. And of course, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks so much for having me all the way here from Florida, right?
Yeah, you're all the way there in Florida. You just told me summertime hit over there. So that's got to be very, very interesting, very humid and hot, probably. Well, we know.
I would say those are two words to describe it. Definitely. Yeah. I love the heat, though, so I'm good.
I hit on 25 Celsius, and that's, whatever comes up there, it goes higher. It's kind of uneasy, and when it hits like 27, 28, I'm done. That's not my temperature. I like the mid section.
You're in the majority, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So 120. Let's talk about that. I find it so intriguing. Like I said earlier on before the show, I mentioned I wanted to go for the 140, but you're going for the 120. Now, go ahead, tell us what's the driving force behind that age, and how did you get there from your 20s?
Nico, it's an interesting question, and I think, quite honestly, it isn't about 120 per se. It's more about what I like to refer to and what others refer to as our health span rather than our lifespan. Because I think any of your listeners would agree, okay, 120 sounds great, but if I'm going to spend the last 30 years in pain or, suffering, battling a chronic disease, then I don't want any part of it, Mm-hmm. So it isn't about 120. It's about how long can we sustain good health? And, in my mind, at least this dream, this vision that I had was, the phrase I used at the time in my mid-20s was to square the curve. I had this vision of living my life, sort of imagine in your mind's eye a horizontal line. Uh-huh. And then one day, let's say at the age of 120, that's a dream. Mm-hmm. We go to sleep one night and we just don't wake up the next day after doing something fun that day, right? Mm-hmm. And that day would be that vertical line. So we've got this squared curve. And of course, this is juxtaposed against what we typically see now, at least here in the US, which is a slow, gradual decline of health, right? Sort of a stair step, where with each succeeding year after, say, the age of 70, or even many folks my age, we start to see, more aches and pains. I think chronic pain now is, or pain, I should say, has become chronic for many folks. And of course, battling diseases and taking increasing numbers of prescription drugs. So it's really about health span, which is the quality of the years, versus lifespan, which is the number of years. And this is the sort of, I'd say, these two parallel worlds that some people, think about, or, that struggle with, because like I said, I don't think anybody would bargain for a life, where they live to, let's say, 100, but the last 20 years are really marked by, convalescing, loneliness, chronic pain, side effects from pharmaceuticals, and on and on. I mean, that's the quality of life that nobody would bargain for. And every single person listening to this knows someone who's probably existing in that world. It could probably even be described as a living hell. So to me, it's about the quality of the years. ultimately, we have to accept that there's going to be something that will ultimately be the linchpin for ending our life. Yeah. So in my mind, very realistically, the way I look at it is delaying the onset of these diseases. Because I often joke with somebody, hey, I'll gladly accept a cancer diagnosis if I am 120 and I only have to suffer for a few days or a week with it, right? Yeah. And I think that's the key, is delaying the onset of these diseases, so that more of the years that we're here on Earth are quality years where we can enjoy the things that make life worth living.
That's a beautiful balance between, let's say, numbers and reality. I actually, when you mentioned 100 years, my grandmother, she passed away beginning of January this year, only a week away from 101. And if I look at her life in the last, like, say, 15 years, she was absent. She was not mentally there anymore. I think last year, when we had her birthday party for 100 years, I think they kind of cut down on the drugs, so she was a little bit more lucid. And that was the time that she talked to everybody again, as in my grandma. And after 100 years, minus 101 minus 1 week, so we did the funeral, and then afterwards, and I've told this before, but my brother and me, we were talking about her life, and then suddenly he walked in with just a cardboard box. And that was filled with a couple of items from her life that was left behind in the home. And it kind of smacked me right in the face, realizing that all her life, and I'm actually writing kind of a TED Talk-ish thing about her life, how she struggled and was alone. And my grandfather was a bus driver, so he spent long times on the road, like most truckers these days do as well. So she struggled, and ending her life in a cardboard box with these few items, it's like you realize that the time you spend in life is so much more precious on what you leave behind with the people or the feelings that you leave behind than the items are. And my brother, it was pretty funny, because he found these old articles of my grandfather, who was right before the Second World War, he was a very known cyclist here in Flanders, and cycling is something that's very, very popular here. We have the Tour de France really close by, to Ronde van Vlaanderen, which is also Paris-Roubaix, and so on. And he was, I don't know if you know the name Eddy Merckx.
Of course, yeah. They're arguably the greatest cyclist of all time.
Yeah, the cannibal, they called him yes. Sometimes. Yeah. So we were also, my dad was also a heavy fan. My grandma was even a heavy fan. And my grandfather, was in, let's say, a decade before or two before Eddie Merckx was born. And at the time, he was already known as a very heavy winner. You know, he almost won every competition he did and so on. And then the war came. He had to escape from Nazis or whatever. And so she spent her life seeing a husband leaving the house all the time and then coming back after so long and this and that. And then you see how much she did in that world. She wasn't an easy lady, by the way. She was not always loved. She was harsh. She was, you know, I call her the colonel sometimes because she kind of commanded the whole street. But it does give you a perspective of, okay, she turned 100, and the last 15 years to 20 years she was not there. So did she turn 100 or did she turn 85? And her health, she went in and out of hospitals and so on, and she loved doctors, so she loved medication. And then I wonder for myself, what's this for me and the people I'm surrounded with and so on. So I also kind of look out for not using too many chemicals. Let's put a general name on it. But it's sometimes difficult within our world our society is built on these new systems. How do you tackle health without the aid of these items? I would say I'm trying to be a little bit soft on what I'm expressing here, because there's so many. It's so diverse. You have homeopathy, you have antibiotics and whatever. But how do you see this story grow and people helping?
Well, it's a great question. I think it begins with making a conscious decision to take control, or I should say, take responsibility for your health. Mm-hmm. Right? Because we want to offload the responsibility for a lot of things in our life to someone else. And the reality is, or something else, it starts with taking responsibility. And then along with that, reinforcing a belief system that says we have some control over our health, over the outcome that we're looking for over the course of our life. I mean, most people don't want to take control or take responsibility. Again, they'd rather, it's the doctor, it's the system, it's the whatever medical community, it's, our environment, whatever. So I think it starts there. And I think obviously that belief that we do have control and that our choices matter, I think those things, it takes a while to be able to build that belief system, because you need to take a little bit of action. You need to reinforce, your action on a consistent basis and begin to see the changes that happen. Mm-hmm. It's, and I know, let's be really honest. When we look at centralized medicine, and this is not just here in the US, but I think it's infiltrating around our globe. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of money to be made with a lot of specialists, and there's a lot of money to be made with treatment for diseases. There's very little money to be made in prevention of diseases. So I like to say that there's no money in good health. I mean, the healthcare system here makes very little money off of me. Yeah. In fact, as I sit here, I've never taken a prescription drug, to be honest. So that makes me obviously an outlier. Is that because I've got great genes? Well, when my dad was my age at 64, he'd been diagnosed with a glioblastoma and was dead 10 months later. And if you look at pictures of my dad, when he was 5 years younger than I am right now, he looked like he was 75 or 80 or even 85. I've got a picture of my grandfather lying in a convalescent home bed at the age of 70, and he was dead at 71. But at 70, he looked like he was 90. So is it about our Is it about our genes? Is it about our family history? We want to, it's really easy to say, I'm probably going to have high blood pressure because my dad has it and my grandfather had it. So yeah, Now, I like to say, genes may load the gun, but it's your lifestyle choices that pull the trigger. And that's the
That's
bottom
true, man.
line. But I think, as a species, we're wired to take the easiest path. We're wired to look for the quick, easiest solution. And we live in a world where everybody's looking to make their buck. And so we're being sold technologies and things that make our life easier, and we're pleasure seeking. We get on that, a dopamine rush, and there you go. And, so all of these things we're talking about, I think, to fight against those requires a conscious choice, a decision. And again, I always come back to the idea, what if we could see our memories in advance? Imagine, you talk about your grandmother, and I can tell you, I have an exact same story with my mom. But what if we could, as we sit here right now, if we could actually literally see our memories, in other words, see 10 years or 15 years into the future, and the reality of our life at that moment. So imagine I'm 75 and I'm lying in a convalescent home bed, and my grandson Theo, who's 6 now, is 16, and he comes to see me, and I can't really engage with him or talk with him, and he feels a little guilty because he hasn't come to see me very often, and he kind of wishes, Papa could be there, but he can't, at his ball games, or when he's in the high school, the high school play, or to meet his girlfriend. And so, now let's flip the script. It's 10 years from now, I'm 75, and we're out in the grass field, and I'm chasing him, and I catch him because I'm faster than he is. And he's like, Papa, that's amazing. Let's, when are we going to go hiking? Let's go ride our bikes. I want you to meet my girlfriend. Hey, I can't wait to see you at the play. I got this role, and I'm so happy about it. Right. So here are two dramatically different memories. Right. But if we could see these in advance, would we make a different choice today? And I think that's the question I hope to have every person I engage with ask themselves, what are you willing to do? Are you willing to do a little bit of hard today over the short term to make the long term a lot easier? Because that's kind of how it works. Easy has a cost, right? You got to choose your hard. Which hard do you want it to be? The hard which says I'm going to make 5 minutes for exercise. I'm going to decide not to eat that processed food. I'm going to decide not to take the drug my doctor wants to give me, and instead make the lifestyle choice that I need to so I can avoid taking the drug. Or am I going to just, accept the easy path now so that over the long term, things become much harder? Because and I know, Nico, without good health, man, everything else, it just doesn't matter as much. And I think this is what drove me in my 20s. And it's what's driven me every year since. This idea that, I could have all the money in the world, and I don't. I can, whatever, right? I mean, all these things, you list all of these things, these material possessions. You described your grandmother. Her life really, it came back to what was in a box. We all know what this feels like. My mom passed in early January as well at 93. And I remembered all the things that she loved about her life, and of course, as the years went on, those things began to fade, and they changed, and they became, in some respects, like this one TV show that she would want to watch. And it became so important for her to record that show. But none of it mattered in the last moments of her life, in the last weeks and months of her life when she was suffering, terribly. So yeah, man, what we're talking about right now is the most important thing that every person needs to consider, but it's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah, that's very true. Recently, I've never been a sports person. I've never exercised, continuously. When I was 16, 17 years old, no, a little bit earlier, when I was 14, my dad started doing the side hustle, which was delivering papers to houses, adverts and stuff like that. So I walked a lot of miles, a lot of kilometers in that time. It was 4 years during my high school period. Every Wednesday, every Thursday, I jumped into the car, and it was a very fun experience because we opened up the back of the car. I was sitting in the back, and I jumped out each time I had to deliver something, which is a unique experience for me and my dad. But it was hard work, and that was my exercise. And then I started doing fitness as well, so power training, and impress girls. You have to do it somehow. I was built. I was ripped. These days I'm ripped a little bit lower. Everything kind of bended down into one zone.
Yeah, in the crowd, man. You're not alone. You're not alone.
And a lot of people want a six pack. I just got, I got a fat. That's perfect. I don't drink that much. No, but it's something that the exercises and also all these things. I've been working on my business for so many years, and I've been sitting, and I've done crazy hours, and I never spent any time on doing any exercises, which now I am absolutely feeling. Walking, standing for a long time, it hurts, but I have come to a point where I'm saying this is good pain. This is pain that I need to go through now so I can build my body again and get those muscles up. And especially, the whole pandemic story didn't help there. And today, each morning, what I do since I think 4 months now, I do these small exercises like wiggling my legs and raising my arms and stuff like that. Just an exercise that I learned, somebody who taught me a little bit of Tai Chi as a warm up. And since I've been doing that, I get up in the morning and I get out of bed. Where, let's say 8 months ago, I was crawling out of bed. I could not get out of bed, and it's these little things that compound to the effect of being a little bit more healthy, streaming, and so on. And what you're saying is about, the story about the pain and the struggle. It's a part of the game, like I said earlier when we were talking, no pain, no gain. It's a classic, it's a movie. I've never seen it, but I know the gist of it. But what I've also learned in these last couple of years, pain is something, and I'm not trying to say the messages or what's it called. Pain is good. Pain is a good sign. But what I've learned is to enjoy the journey instead of the destination. And since I've been doing that, all these little things have become a part of my life to improve each day just a little bit. Going for a walk just a little bit further.
Yep.
And we all know that we never touch our boundaries. We never go for the end. If we would not only go for 1 mile, but we'd do 10 or even more just to get there. If the need is there. And I do get the whole idea of it's easy if you go to a doctor and give you pain prescription. My own parents, there's this thing that's it's kind of a salve that you put on your back, and then it relaxes your muscles. I think they have 4 or 5 of these tubes in their house spread around, so whenever they feel a little honey, put some on, and they're 74. But it does not help in the long run. And I see my mom, who's kind of slowing down even more and more because they're in a little apartment. They don't go out. They used to live on the seaside where she went for a cup of coffee, read her book, talked to people. These days, bed, chair, bed, kitchen, chair. Bed. You don't move anymore. And I think it's not only physical, but it's also the whole mental thing that kind of follows next to it, I think.
Yeah. I think you've approached things, in my opinion, just the right way for yourself. I say in my book that, we know change is messy, Nico, right? Yeah, most people don't want to change. And for good reason. It's hard. I say in my book, our change, the things that we embark on trying to do, should almost be so small that they're almost imperceptible as a change. So for example, if you're typically sedentary and you don't move very much, just making a decision to walk for 2 minutes straight or 5 minutes straight may not sound like very much to somebody who runs 25 miles a week, but for that person who's typically sedentary, it could be a significant change. And the key, of course, is that when it's so small, it's almost imperceptible. It's something that if you can just back up and be consistent with, can become a part of your daily routine and something that you can do almost unconsciously. That's the path to making more long-term changes that stick versus trying to do too much too soon. And, you end up getting very sore or worse, injured because you're trying to do too much or burnt out, right? And so that negative self-talk comes back at you because, you tried this and then you got hurt and, what an idiot. And, I'm not going to do that again. And you end up in this vicious cycle. So small changes where you can begin to put, tiny little actions, one on top of another, is exactly the way that, we want to go about it. Now, the flip side is when we do it that way, it takes a while to get the results we're really looking for. So we've got to take a long-term approach, which speaks exactly to what you're talking about when you make it about the journey. One of the things that, you just said, which is really true, is this idea that in the world today, in our sort of the culture of what I think of as our global community, certainly here in the US, is we now live indoors. We're now spending the overwhelming majority of our time indoors, like more than 95% of the overwhelming majority of people, 95% of their day is spent indoors. And very often that indoors is spent under artificial light, artificial blue light that can have a negative impact. We're a species that has evolved outdoors, to be outdoors. I mean, as little as 150 years ago, the only light you'd get at night would be from a campfire or the moon. Now we live in a world where very few people see the sun when it rises or are exposed to the full spectrum of light from the sun. And at the flip side, at the opposite end, they're getting hammered with all kinds of this artificial light after the sun is set. So we've got a very disturbed circadian biology, which has a dramatic impact on our health, all negative, by the way. But to your point, man, when you just to say, I'm going to get outdoors, I'm going to, go out and see nature, experience nature. In my book, I talk about how I love the beach here, and negative ions, this really positive thing which happens, which just makes me happier. And I feel good when I'm feeling, the waves, hearing the waves, feeling the water on my skin, all of these things that are about getting out in nature. And to your point, making it about the journey. And as a byproduct of that, we're getting more of the full spectrum light from the sun, which is essential for our health. And we're getting less of that artificial light, and we're getting more natural movement into our day. So it isn't about structured exercise, and it isn't about no pain, no gain, man. That is not going to work for people long term. It just never does. I mean, it's much more about embracing a little bit of discomfort. One piece of advice that I'll typically give for someone who I think is struggling with this idea of making these small changes, I just ask them, and in a way, your introduction to the show kind of, it made me think for a moment about this. What I'll ask them to do is I say, just take 15 to 30 seconds, close your eyes, and imagine how good you're going to feel after you're done. Right? Yeah. Emotionally, like pat yourself on the back. I don't care how little anyone might think it is. If you can get in 5 minutes of exercise when you haven't before, right? When you can do one good quality push up when you weren't before, even if it's, against a wall, just think about, just take 30 seconds, close your eyes, and imagine how good you're going to feel about yourself and how good physically that's going to feel. And when you can do that, and you latch onto that, maybe that gives you just enough inertia, right? Enough of a sense like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then do it, and then just back it up every day. And it every day it's a moving target, man. Like it's easy to say it's automatic. It's never automatic.
No.
Every day it's just like brushing our teeth. I like ask somebody like, listen, just because you brushed your teeth today, does that mean you don't have to do it for the rest of the week? No, everybody knows if you want to keep all of these, right? You gotta. It's a daily struggle, but it's worth it.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And what I've loved to realize, and I really loved to realize it, is that all these little pebbles make a very big mountain at the end. And it's like you can describe imagining the mountain already being there, and then knowing that I can get there, I can make that mountain. And one of the things that I sometimes find intriguing is how people strive for something. And what I found intriguing was that they strive for something, and I could not understand why they were continuously striving for that. And it's only been years or 2-3 years since I realized that it's all those little things that add up to one big pile. And that's why I also try to make clear to my listeners and to the people I meet and the people I work with is it is never about the end goal in per se. You need the end goal as something to strive for, and you will never reach the end goal exactly as you thought it would be today, because it's going to change along the way. It's like you said, every day is a new beginning, and every story, a new story going on, and that story's changing. And it's the same thing with all these exercises, because one day you might have a little ache in the elbow, and push-ups is not a possibility, but you can stand up and do these crunches instead, or go sit on a chair and stand up 20 times. It's also an exercise. There's always a way to find another thing to do, and even better maybe. And that's one of. So recently I started walking again. Like I said, it's these little steps that give you so much good feelings. And now I've got this location where I'm at, and it's a big building, and I've made myself clear, okay, I'm just going to walk around the building. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go far away into streets and so on. And since I've been doing that, you kind of feel that every day it's kind of an automatic, and that's it. It's creating these habits every day, and at some point you're just lunchtime, oh yeah, let's go outside, bam. You don't even think about it anymore. You're not even thinking about the future. It's just getting yourself on a roll, and once you're on the roll, it kind of comes automatically. Of course, life happens, and when then you go on holiday for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, maybe the habit goes away a little bit and you have to restart it, but it's always there. And the image that you just said earlier about your grandson, and then running after and catching him even at 16, being quicker at let's say your age, because I always find it difficult to say that, but anyway.
Yeah,
Listen,
I got no shot at being faster than he is at 16. I can tell you that. But I like the idea of threatening him with the idea that Papa's going to catch you. So
yeah.
we all, Nico, we all have to have a why for whatever it is we do. In the epilogue to my book, I asked the question, "What's your why?" There's an absolutely beautiful German Christmas commercial, which I describe in the epilogue to the book. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it starts off with this very old man waking up to an alarm, and he's kind of, and he trudges off to his garage and drags a kettlebell out into the middle of the floor, and he can't possibly pick it up, and so he struggles, and very quickly we see the story evolve where he's becoming stronger, and he's starting to be able to lift this kettlebell, and the neighbors are looking at him and they're wondering what's going on. And at one point, one of the neighbors calls his daughter and says, you better check on him. Something, I don't know if you've seen this commercial. It's absolutely amazing. I'll send you the link. Yeah. And of course, the one word that's spoken in this, 2-minute commercial is where she says, Papa, like, what are you doing? Of course, at the end of the commercial, we realize what it was all about is he arrives on Christmas morning with a gift for his granddaughter, which turns out to be a star. And she's just glowing and she's so happy. And so he picks her up and he lifts her so that she can place the star at the top of the tree. Just absolutely beautiful story.
True.
And everyone, tears down their eyes. And to me, this encapsulates this idea. What's your why? What's driving you? So, as an athlete, as someone, myself has done marathons and Ironman. I mean, you always have this goal, this date, in the future. You reverse periodize against, what that goal is, and you plan all the steps that need to happen for you to be able to get to race day. And I think life is much the same way. It's like you said, it is about the journey and it's about the process. And I love the process, but I understand that most people aren't like me, but I think more people can be like me. Like, explore your body, learn about your body, right? Yeah. Educate yourself, enlighten yourself, man. This is your temple, right? Like, this is the building you're living in. And so if the roof is leaking and the foundation is crumbling, you're not going to be very happy in that building.
No, that's true. Yeah.
Honor it and learn about it and explore it. And when we look at exercise, for me, it's exploration. It's like every day I'm learning, okay, what's changing, right? And how can I do something a little differently to be able to meet a challenge? Now, again, most people don't think the way that I think. I get that. But I think if more of us could think a little bit this way and go, maybe I'm going to honor my body today rather than worrying about whether the car needs to be washed or vacuumed. And I'm the guy out there, I'm vacuuming the car, whatever. Right. This is your temple, this is the one thing that you will have forever and you're not getting any more, despite the popularity of artificial joints and things like that. To me, an artificial joint will never be your actual joint, right? And we want to honor that and keep those certainly for as long as we can. So, yeah, man, it's about your why. What is your why for what you're doing or not doing?
Yeah. So how does that come into play with the combination of the exercises and food and environment and all of that beautiful stuff? Because if you're not in the right environment, you won't eat the right food, you won't do the right exercises. You're in Florida, which is a known place for elderly people. That's what we know as Europeans from movies and so on.
Yeah, of course.
And you confirmed it to me earlier. So looking at the environment you're in, I think you probably find a lot of peers there who lived a totally other lifestyle. How do you approach these people by giving them new ideas? Well, your book is one way, but how do you do it now?
Well, I don't have any answers for that. It's a challenge. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I think most people, and maybe I shouldn't use the word most because that's generalizing, and I'm not sure. And I'm in a position to generalize about that. But I would say a fairly large percentage of people would rather just block their ears, and block their eyes and bury their head in the sand and hope for the best. I think that's the majority. So how do I hope to help people see the possibilities? And I would say, maybe I'm a glass half full kind of person some of the time. I think advocating for it by living the way that I live, by doing the things that I do. I'll tell you, my neighbors here, I live in this little community about 2 miles from the beach, about 100 homes. And they see me out walking every night barefooted, on the grass, on the gravel, on the gnarly asphalt. I need to be grounded. I don't want the effect of shoes in those circumstances. So they see me out, walking barefooted, and they're like, man, what's wrong with that? Doesn't that hurt, man? What's wrong with you? And then the next morning they see me, I'm running out the front entrance, and and they're like, man, the dude is running again. He's lost his mind. I hope that, I guess I have the sign in my house that says, be the change you want to see in the world. Mm-hmm. I hope that if I can live a certain way and advocate for a certain way of life, that some people might be influenced by that. And certainly the book is one way. Mm-hmm. But, to your point, it is a challenge, because the reality is most people place way too much trust in their doctors and in the healthcare system, and way too little trust in someone like me who has lived what I preach for my entire life. I don't have a PhD and I'm not an MD. So I guess therefore I'm a guy that doesn't know anything about how to live a life the right way. If that sounds a little cynical, probably there is an element of cynicism there, because I think it has been hard for me to get, to try to reach people, like I said, the overwhelming majority. Listen, we just went through this pandemic, and I don't know how it was where you are. You and I talked about a little bit about it before, but there's so many people around me that embrace this idea of isolating, embrace this idea of wearing the mask. And they looked at me like, like I was crazy because I was resisting it. And of course, the whole idea of natural immunity was completely, poo-pooed, and naturally the vaccine became the thing. And I would never go near that vaccine. Mm-hmm. I'm not anti-vaccine, of course, but I knew the thing hadn't been fully vetted and tested. I didn't trust that, they said it was what it was, and I wasn't about to take it. I fully trust my own immune system and my ability to resist. And I think what we've learned is that it was essentially a flu virus, and that we were largely sold a bill of goods with respect to the vaccine. Mm-hmm. And now we're seeing these vaccine injuries at extraordinary rates, scary, particularly in young men. So I think, the challenge is how to get an individual person that's listening to this right now to sit back and think to themselves, I've got to start to take responsibility for my health. No one's going to do it for me. And I need to learn something. And as I learn, I can explore, and maybe I can put the odds in my favor, because there are no guarantees. We know so much of it is a mystery. We're just trying to put the odds in our favor. That's what we're really trying to do, right?
I can relate with a lot of things that you're saying. So currently I'm an executive coach, and I have no higher university education, MBA, whatever, stuff like that. I did it the hard way. I went through the whole story, did the leadership. I had some trainings. I experienced hard times with teams that were crumbling. Currently, I'm actually in a project since 2 years that was pure chaos, which was for me paradise. I walk in, I love chaos. I make it structured. I make people work together again, and all that beautiful stuff. And it's not easy doing these things, because it's a lot of people management. And I always look at humans as an organism as well. There's always somewhere a disease in an environment that causes why the other parts are not working as well. It's the same with the human body. And this is one of the things that I've also learned, where taking that responsibility and saying, okay, there is one person here in this group who will stand, and whatever mistakes that are being made or are going to be made, I will take the responsibility, but we will work together to find the solutions. And by doing these steps, you teach the others as well. You're living the example of taking decisions, of moving forward, of finding solutions. And at the end of the story right now, it is a team that works amazingly well. We even have a situation where somebody is not really, somebody new came in, she's a bit unruly, a different character. You see the team, there's so nicely glued together that even that doesn't budge them too much. They kind of complain, of course, because they don't like it and this and that, but it doesn't budge them. And as a leader, you're still standing there and you're taking control of the body in that case. And then others are kind of in doubt of what do we need to do and so on. You take on, you say, this is what we're doing. These are the final decisions. This is next step is this and this and this. If that doesn't work, we know what we need to do. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes the hard decisions. Nobody likes to put somebody in a position that they cannot get out of. But it's a part of life, and it's the same thing with health and food and these decisions of a system that invokes a panic attack or scarcity or fear because of some kind of thing that's there that's not even there, which is something normal that just was there already. They blew it up. Why? I have no idea. There's probably some kind of agenda. I don't care about the agenda. But for me, it's the same story. Once this story, I started my business in February 2020. March was lockdown. I really, I timed it really beautifully. But what I did was like, usually, people would kind of try to avoid these. I don't look at news. I don't see news. So if this thing was going on in Italy and in China, whatever, I didn't know about it. Just, walked into our country and bam, lockdown. And the first week I was kind of in a panic, but also I was trying to find solutions on getting out of this and that and that. And then especially starting to enjoy, because it was actually the first week that we started playing board games again with my family here at home, because we're, lockdown. I wanted to enjoy my time with my kids. So first thing we did was enjoy time with each other. And then all these stories came up indeed with vaccines and all that stuff. And I think the first week we did not have any effect, but the second week I was sick. I didn't feel okay. I had high temperature and this and that. So I had the flu, basic period. I had the flu. And people were like, oh, hospital, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I'm staying home. I got, I've got these remedies that are so old. Yeah. They're not even, good sleep, rest, look and listen to your body and it will heal. Simple as that. And then I think it was about a year later, something like that. Again, I had the exact symptoms, loss of taste, loss of scent, high temperature, and so on. And I hadn't had the vaccine. I didn't want it. I didn't see the point, because exactly the same idea. It was not vetted. It was not tested. Why should I use it? And on the other side, I'm a healthy. At that point, I was 40 years old. I'm healthy. I can move, whatever. And the strange thing that happened was a lot of people in my family, started distancing. I'm like, what did I do wrong? This is I'm allowed to decide what happens to my body. Why would I be punished for it? I wear the mask just for the safety of others and the impression of others. I didn't care if I needed to use it or not. This was my mindset. And I did not want to hear the discussion of, oh, you're not wearing a mask. I don't care. I just like, okay, put it on, just walk outside, go to a shop and, undergo the world and don't be the difficult one. And in family, it was like we had this moment where I think our kids, we have this tradition at New Year's where they read a letter to their grandparents, wishing them well for the next year and so on. And I went to my father-in-law, and we had to stand outside 2 meters away from them. And our kids were standing there reading, fully packed with all clothes and shower and everything. And they were reading this letter, and I burst into tears. I didn't show explicitly to my father-in-law, but I was like, what in God's name are we doing? What effect does this give to these two kids? They are showing a moment of love, and there is something there that is unspoken that's swiveling around. And then years later now, there is a distance in the family. It's period. There is a distance in the family, and it's still there, and it needs to be healed at some point. And it's from my side, my doors are always open. Everybody's welcome. I will not judge. I'm also not an anti-vaxxer or anything like that. I don't care if somebody wants a needle in their arm. There's very good vaccinations like polio and stuff like that. It just needs to be done.
Of course.
I had a mentor who had polio when he was a kid, and at some point he was completely blind and cataract and stuff like that. It's a part of life, these sicknesses, and it's just the effect that it had on people. And then I started reading years after that I think it was right after the First World War, the same kind of disease went around the world, and it had a different effect, of course, because people didn't know at the time. News was not that prevalent, and of course there was just a war that had happened. This was scenario 2. It would exactly the same thing as then. And I'm like, if this thing comes around every 80 years, what's going to be the next time? It's going to be not isolated. Everybody's going to, wear these silicone suits or something. No, our body is made to protect itself. And
Yes.
Might sound cruel, but and with all goodness in my heart, but the people who do not have the resistance, there's basically something else that is wrong with that body or with their mindset or whatever. And if it has a very bad ending, it's a part of life. And this disease is something that's out there, which is naturally, whatever speculation there is. But on the other side, it is taking care of that body again, which is the point where you win. And I also believe that when it comes down to body, that's one thing. But the same thing with being persistence in business, pushing through, keeping going, showing other people what is possible. I hope to be an example of explaining to people or showing people how you can enjoy being a very highly active business person who is constantly working and working crazy hours, but I am enjoying every minute of it, and I'm not working toward a goal that is high rise. I want to earn money. Yes. Why? Comfort. Why? Because I love my family. Why? Because I want to take care of myself in a way that these things are present, so on and so on. So I think living as an example is the best way to start with these things, and it kind of rubs off anyway at some point. Yeah.
Well, we can hope so. I mean, the reality is, in the end, I remember a very good friend of mine who was very successful in business many years ago said to me, Al, you may think you know what is best for another person, but it's not up to you to decide when they may see or realize themselves what ultimately is best for them. And so I think at the end of the day, I know for me, I just have to go, all I can do is what I can do. And the rest, it'll be what it'll be,
Yeah.
Certainly with respect, looking back on the pandemic, like no amount of, see, I told you so is going to matter. It's not going to change anybody's mind. As it turns out, not only was the vaccine potentially harmful, but it didn't prevent transmission. And it was never as good as natural immunity. And masks don't work to stop an aerosol virus, of which there are millions around us at every moment in time. And of course, the overwhelming majority of people that passed or struggled to this day are those folks that are, that are described as having comorbidities. They're not healthy people to begin with. I say in my book, Nico, what most people think of as good health isn't. Like I could walk into my local grocery store and walk up to somebody, and if they're not struggling with like a cold at that moment, or they don't have pain right at that moment, I could ask them, are you healthy? And they would go, yeah, I'm healthy. Why do you ask? But they might be on a high blood pressure medication. They might be taking a statin to lower their LDL cholesterol, right? They might be pre-diabetic and not even know it, insulin resistant, right? They might be 20 to 30 pounds overweight. They might be completely out of breath walking up one flight of stairs. Those people are not healthy. I mean, that's the harsh reality. So maybe that ill health hasn't manifested in symptoms, which would be diagnosed as a disease, but they're not healthy. So their immune systems are compromised, their health is compromised, and the first moment that they might be under attack from, a viral infection of some kind or whatever it may be, they're going to be more likely to have more serious symptoms and ultimately have that cascade into an illness that becomes more serious and life-threatening. That's just the way, the way that it works. The old adage, what doesn't kill me will make me stronger, is true. In my book, I talk about hormesis, or hormetic stress, and this idea that the human body does respond to stressors, positive and negative, but there are positive stressors that make us more resilient. So that's important.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. There's so many aspects on this that no, honestly, I think there would be a very big advantage if people would follow you with the things that you're bringing out, because I've been looking at your LinkedIn posts and your videos, which are very educational, very very insightful, and some of them are just so simple. You explain things really simple and really direct, and I think that's a very big advantage. So where can people find you? Because you've explained a lot of things here, but I think it might be important for some of them, get the book first. That's the first idea I would put out there, especially, high achieving executives who've been around for a while, and they're going to their second, the second that you say, the second lifespan, their second story, and taking care of the body is going to help them last longer as well in their roles. So where can people find you, and how can they reach out to you?
Well, thank you, Nico. Of course, my book, Age Well and Feel Great, The Proven Path to Solving the Aging Puzzle and Going the Distance, is available on Amazon. It's also available at my website, theallyman.com.
Okay.
And I also have a website with a series of online courses and programs that are exercise oriented. That site is pursuitathleticperformance.com. Of course, as you mentioned, I can be reached on LinkedIn. The amount I'm posting there varies. Sometimes I'm pouring a lot of content in there, and other times less so, depending on, life's challenges from one day to the next. But I really enjoy the opportunity to work with those folks. You described someone who's, looking at, they're sort of my age. They're looking at retirement. They're looking at the second half of their life. They've worked their entire life. Perhaps they've accumulated a little bit of, some solid financial base, and now they want to make sure that they can actually enjoy the years that follow after working their entire life. I think those are probably the folks that I would say I work with most often, because they want results. They want to be sure that they're on the right path. They want to know what their blood work means. They want to know how they should exercise and what they should do. And really, they want someone in their corner encouraging them to encourage themselves, and start to see those memories, man, because, when we can do that, we can start to empower ourselves to take control. By the way, you've inspired me right now, because you just said something a moment ago about, how in business we have to be persistent, right? And just keep forging ahead. And there are plenty of days when I wake up and I'm like, screw it, man, I'm done. I'm done with this. It's just like, I'm so far in the red when it comes to my business. It's not even funny, right? And then other days I wake up and I have a conversation with, someone like yourself, and I go, maybe I got to keep going here.
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%, even 200% from my side. The things you're doing, Al, is amazing. And I think the impact that you can make on so many different people, even at a later age, because it's the moment to start is now. Whatever, whoever, wherever you are, it is now. And you can always get better. It's as long as you put in the effort, and even
Yeah.
if it's
But don't
small.
overthink it. Start now.
Yeah,
That's right.
absolutely.
Don't overthink it.
Absolutely.
Do it. Absolutely. Whatever it is. 1 minute of this, one processed food that you typically eat, get it out. Just that one choice, right? Just that one decision. Try to get to bed a little earlier, get in a little bit of routine, get out in the morning and see the sun. Any of these tiny little changes, as you've alluded to many times through our conversation, they're like pebbles that turn into a mountain. It's compound interest, 100%, and they do add up, provided we repeat and just be consistent, right? It's what I call the grind in a way. It's like, man, life is about basics and fundamentals that we can repeat over and over again, and out of that, hopefully, we build a beautiful life, especially over the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm starting to look forward at the second half. I'm 45. If I hear you talking about
it. 20 years when you get to be my age, you'll see.
I will.
I get up like, I strength train today, and I'm like, you know what? I'm planning on being around for a lot longer period of time. And sadly, my dad was gone just a few months after the age that I am right now, and I just think about all that he has missed, and that my kids and grandkids have missed, and how they would love to be able to enjoy time with him now. It's just wasn't meant to be, but it inspires me and motivates me.
Yeah, I think you're probably going to inspire a couple of people as well by saying those things. Absolutely.
Hope so.
Thank you very much, Al, for the time you spent with us and the inspiring subjects and ideas that you've brought forward. Thank you so much for it.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And to our listeners, check out the new ebook just being launched on the website, nicovandevenne.com or everlastingpodcast.com. And remember to jump from head to heart and feel the beat within. Have a great one. Bye-bye, everybody. Ciao.
Thank you for listening to the Everlasting Podcast. Let me leave you with a few questions to answer in the comments. How do you see the different topics we discussed during this interview? What are your thoughts? What stood out for you? Let us know in the comments or just send us your feedback. We launch new episodes weekly. Don't miss any by ensuring you are subscribed to the show. Click the follow button now. We depend on the organic growth of the podcast to inspire more and more people. So by giving us a 5-star review and sharing this episode with at least one of your friends who might be interested in the subject, you will significantly help more people become inspired. But more than anything, I am grateful to you for taking the time to listen to the show. If you are also a successful CEO, founder, or entrepreneur who has inspiring words to say, feel free to contact us for an interview at contact@nicovandevenne.com. Thank you for listening. We will see you again soon with more inspirational conversations on achieving everlasting fulfillment.